Good evening, everyone. I'm Deb Henneberry of the 99s Webinar Committee, and I welcome you to tonight's presentation, Volunteer Flying. SiriusXM is the sponsor of tonight's webinar, and we'd like to thank them for their continued support of the 99s. So we have 4 speakers to get through. They're all going to take about 10 to 12 minutes speaking about their respective organizations. And we're going to begin with Deb Dreyfuss and Pilots and Paws.
Hi, everybody. There's something special about volunteer flying, and whether you're doing it for, for animals, or you're doing it for people, or you're just doing it to give back to the community, it's really something special you do. And I'd like you to introduce you to a fun, exciting way to fly and save lives, even if they're not people. I'm talking about Pilots and Paws, a 501c3 nonprofit that connects rescue organizations nationwide with volunteer pilots to transport animals over long distances to fosters and new loving homes. The site is a communication venue between those that rescue, shelter, foster animals, and of course, us pilots who are willing to assist with the transportation of them. I've personally saved so many animals, not just during the virus pandemic, but all year, working with Pilots and Paws and actually a couple of other organizations, but mostly Pilots and Paws. It's an online meeting place for all of us pilots and volunteers, and a much better option than commercial or ground transport over really long distances. I've been flying animals from puppy farms, kill shelters, animal sanctuaries, and animal foster parents for more than 4 years, and have saved over 200 pups and kittens. Each animal has a story, and it's been heartwarming to see these little guys find love and new families. Over last summer and fall, I rescued over 15 dogs flying to Salt Lake City, Durango, Kansas, Texas, Wyoming, Montana, and Denver. Back east, I flew to North Carolina, West Virginia, Maryland, and New Jersey. Pilots and Paws has given me the opportunity to give back to the community while having a great excuse to fly. I've been lucky to see breathtaking scenery from the Rockies to Low Country, East Coast, Southwest, and even the Bahamas. Everywhere I fly, I make new friends, meet the sweetest furry passengers, knowing that I'm saving these precious animal lives. These 4-legged friends almost know they are traveling to better lives, and I can feel their gratitude. The rescue organizations I work with fully vet these lucky pups for their suitability to travel and be adopted. They travel with their health certificates, toys, blankets, and sometimes crates. I always have at least 2 carriers of my own that were actually given to me by Pilots and Paws. Sometimes my contacts show their appreciation by sending along thank you gifts, from cookies, mugs, wine, dog treats, and even a bandana for my own pup. I get elaborate handwritten thank you notes, beautiful texts, and emails. It's astonishing to me. As well, I adore these love tokens. I surely do it for love of helping the helpless. I'm just the bus driver after all. Now, I'm going to show you an introduction. Our Patty Wagstaff actually flies for Pilots and Paws, and perhaps we can get that next slide. Click again. Oh, no sound. I guess there's no sound.
Hey, I'm Patty Wagstaff, a 6-time member of the U.S. Aerobatic Team, and I'm a proud member of a group called Pilots and Paws. We're making a difference by connecting general aviation pilots with animal rescues and shelters. Did you know that more than 4 million animals are euthanized in this country every year? And Pilots and Paws is working to change that. Our pilots fly animals safe from euthanasia to areas of the country with adoptive homes and loving families waiting for them. Now, we need your help. If you're a general aviation pilot who's looking for a great reason to fly, this is it. Come join me. Please visit pilotsandpaws.org or my website, pattywagstaff.com, for more information. Let's go flying.
Okay, that was a nice introduction by Patty. And we have yet, next slide. We got next slide, okay. And this will be it. Okay, and then this tells a little bit about what we do. Go ahead, click. Oh, wait, go back.
No, there's a
delay on this one.
Pause for it to happen. Just hold on a sec.
Paws and Paws is a national organization of volunteer pilots. They work together and connect shelters and rescues and fly animals in need. Whatever the case may be, our volunteer pilots will step up to the plate and fly these animals to a place of safety. These are just everyday working people who have a passion to fly, and they also have an equal passion to fly animals to safe havens. They like to get together and share their stories and their experiences, and there's a nice camaraderie that's built between the pilots. Founded in 2008, Pilots and Paws now has 5,000 volunteer pilots across every state.
All these pilots love dogs. They love flying. So they're doing it for the same reasons I am. We just love what we do.
What we're doing is making a statement about the animals that need help and assistance. They don't have very good spay and neuter protocols here. So that leads to an overabundance. And Paws and Paws are working to move these animals where they can find their adoptive homes.
We've got 10 aircraft here, and my job was to assign the dogs to particular aircraft based on size and the types of crates that each plane is carrying. Okay, ready to load up. I'm here to show you how I stack crates in my aircraft. Put one crate on the bottom, one crate on top, and then side to side. And the crates are sized so that I no longer have to strap the crates in, and they are stable. They don't fall over the aircraft.
Next slide. Okay, so Pilots and Paws is actually a 501c3 charity, providing the free flights for service animals, rescue animals, and even injured wildlife. Sometimes we do emergency response to natural disasters and, flying all kinds of animals. All flights are done by volunteer pilots. We donate our planes and the flight costs to the rescues. And by the way, it's tax deductible. Many animals are flown out of high kill shelters across the country for a second chance finding a loving home. Next. Why Pilots and Paws? According to the SPCA, over 1.5 million animals are euthanized in shelters yearly. It can be avoided when animals are transported to no-kill shelters or rescues, or even, just people who want a new animal companion. Often, many rescues are hundreds of miles away and a long drive for animals, which is very stressful. Flights with fewer handoffs are definitely beneficial to the animals. So pilots fly them to safety, either to a no-kill rescue or forever homes. Next. Here's one of my little pilots that came along next with me, and he was kind of a Snoopy wannabe. Dog is my co-pilot. Next. So here's some numbers. It started in 2008, 15,000 animals flown yearly by pilots nationwide. 200,000 animals have been flown since the inception, and 6,000 pilots and over 1,000 fosters. Next. The journey of a flight, the transport, it's all going on to their website, which will be at the end of the little video. Transport requests posted on Pilots and Paws online forum. The pilots respond if they're able to fly. Sometimes they can only fly one segment if it's a really long distance, but that's okay. I've coordinated with as many as 3 other pilots to make it happen. Rescues and pilots coordinate through the forum and for the details of the flight. We meet our sender at the airport on the day of the flight, which we've already arranged for in advance. And then we do our flight or flights. And then our receiver, which is usually the rescue organization, a foster, or actually the adoptive parent, comes to the airport to pick up their animals, and a successful flight is finished. Next. Okay, these are some of the animals that I've rescued, and with a foster, meeting them at the airport and how I transport them in my plane. Next. Okay, here's one. Okay, first class seat, great view, and we arrived safely. That boy in that picture is my grandson, and he and his dad adopted the little dog on his lap. Next. So please think about joining Pilots and Paws. It doesn't cost anything to join. It gives you an excuse to fly. And these little dogs would love to be your passenger. So watch the next slide and learn how to rescue pets. You go to pilotsandpaws.org and read the pilot guidelines. Then you click log in at the top and register. There's no cost at all, and you don't have to accept any flights. You join as a part of a region, and then you can get emails that they might have in your region. You can request transports on the ride board or respond to the requests. Sometimes we pilots talk directly with the rescue organizations. They always include paperwork for every dog, even medicines. Sometimes I even had, I had to bottle feed some baby puppies on the way because they had to be fed every 3 hours. And then you can choose to accept a flight or don't even respond at all if it's not good for you that day. We tell all of our rescues that we say it's all dependent on weather.
Yeah.
Sometimes they can postpone for a few days, sometimes not. I've actually had bad weather out west for so long that they ended up taking a different form of transportation, but they know that's an option, and it is arranged beforehand, so nobody's left high and dry. If it's really an emergency, then they hop in their cars and then they drive them. You know, time to spare, go by air. Okay, is the next one I'm trying to see. Yes, thanks for listening. Now I'm going to show you how I have fun with Pilots and Paws. I think is that the next one? Yeah. It has a little music to it if you want to. These are some of my actual rescues. Well, that was my fun. I hope you two can join in that fun and rescue your own lovely little furry creatures.
Questions?
Thank you, Deb. That was an amazing and adorable presentation. I think we all enjoyed.
Yep.
So next up, we have Djana Milton, and she's also going to talk about Pilots and Paws, but she's also going to speak about the Red Tail Hawks Flying Club and also Angel Flight.
Question.
Okay, public benefit flying. So about me, my name is Djana Milton. I'm an instrument rated private pilot. I've had my pilot's license since 2000, bought my first plane in 1999. And if you do the math, yep, I bought my plane before I finished my flight training because I knew I would do this forever. I currently own and fly a 1981 Cessna 182 Romeo. I'm based in Western Washington and Dog is my co-pilot. That's my little girl Sage behind me in this photo. In terms of public benefit flying, I fly for 3 organizations. I'm a volunteer pilot for Pilots and Paws. I also volunteer and fly for the Red-tailed Hawks Flying Club. And I am now a command pilot for Angel Flight West since December of 2022. A little bit about Pilots and Paws. Pilots and Paws motto is saving the lives of innocent animals. And that's pretty much, what they're all about. They were established in 2008. The founder wanted to rescue a Doberman Pinscher from Florida, bring him back to South Carolina so that he wouldn't be euthanized. She enlisted the assistance of a pilot named John. They flew down, got him, brought him back to South Carolina, saved his life. And that was how Pilots and Paws was formed. They wanted to do more, knowing there was a huge need. So they founded Pilots and Paws, created the website, and the rest, as they say, is history. Their flyer reads that, flying for Pilots and Paws is quite possibly the most rewarding flight you'll ever make. I pretty much totally concur with that sentiment. It never gets old. Another pilot that I met while rescuing dogs, a retired airline pilot, states about Pilots and Paws that he loves to fly. He loves dogs, he loves to fly, so it's the perfect combination. It gives him a mission that is not just boring holes in the sky. And he went on to say that, it's so much better than the $100 hamburger. And I also agree. These are photos of a couple of dogs that I rescued. First one is Mochi. We got her from Nevada, flew her to California, flew her from California to Oregon, from Oregon to Washington, and then she was driven across the border into Vancouver, BC by a volunteer. So that was 4 pilots, 4 states, all 3 Western states plus Nevada. 2 puppies in the middle are 2 of 3 and their mother, who we rescued from a kill shelter in Southern California. Basically, the foster got them out on the very last day. The puppies were like 3 weeks old. They got them out on Friday, had to get them out by Friday at 5. Got them out on Friday afternoon, arranged with Pilots and Paws, and we flew them up from Southern California to Gig Harbor in Washington State. The entire family has since been adopted, all 3 puppies and the mother, all found forever homes. The last one here is Dusty. He was a recent rescue. A query went out on Pilots and Paws on January 31st, basically asking for an emergency rescue. He had to be gotten out of Sacramento before 5 o'clock the next day. Another pilot and I stepped up. The pilot from California went down to Sacramento, grabbed him, brought him up to Ashland. I picked him up in Ashland, flew him up to Gig Harbor. So Dusty is now in Gig Harbor. He'd had a rough 1 year. He's only one. His first 1 year was pretty rough. He had some injuries. He's now safely in Gig Harbor, recovering. He is the sweetest pup. So Pilots and Paws, like I said, never gets old, super duper rewarding. Another organization for whom I fly is the Red-tailed Hawks Flying Club. This is a national organization. It is a part of the Black Pilots of America, which was founded in 1969 by some of the remaining Tuskegee Airmen. The goal of the club and the organization is to introduce underserved and underrepresented youth to STEM through aviation. So we basically do summer fly-ins, give a discovery flights. We engage in a partnership with NASA and the University of Washington in their they have a program where they simulate current missions that are going on with NASA. So when they went to Mars and launched the rover, asteroids, Artemis, all of those programs involve science experiments, robotics, drone flying, papers, and model building. So very extensive, and really just a great introduction to some of the various aspects that go on, with any type of, mission or design work. Engage in partnerships with the Boeing Museum of Flight, and those often include the Pacific Science Center. They send representatives, meet at the Museum of Flight. We fly kids from the community. They have science teachers who teach and also conduct experiments. And, it's just a huge day of flying and science. And then they put on summer science camps and rocket camps. They meet monthly, and in each of those monthly meetings, they go over aeronautical principles, write science essays, and also offer flight scholarships for kids who really perform and are interested in pursuing aviation down the road. And then my third volunteer opportunity is with Angel Flight West, and their motto is free flights to those in need. They provide transportation for medical services. They've been around for 40 years, and they have served over 20,000 passengers in that time. Out here, Angel Flight West averages about 10 flights per day. Probably a little less this winter, but in general. It's important because transportation is the second most significant barrier to healthcare behind cost itself. They participate in other humanitarian causes, such as helping women and families escape domestic violence, disaster relief, providing, food, supplies, etc. They help with therapeutic programs for veterans and help get them to those camps and those services. And they also help fly kids to specialty camps. Types of missions, basically advanced disease treatment that is not locally available. A lot of the missions out here go from Seattle or from Montana to Seattle to Swedish, to the University of Washington, etc. Eastern Washington, Spokane, and Idaho, all headed to Seattle. Also down to Southern Oregon and Seattle. So Seattle's kind of the hub where folks are going to obtain treatment. Pre or post-traumatic appointments, transplants. We don't do emergency services, but trips that can be organized ahead of time, we are available for those. For second opinions and expert consultations, clinical trials, pediatric care, lots of young kids, who need specialty care, and again, work for Veterans Administration type work. The requirements for becoming an Angel Flight West pilot, not listed here, background check, of course, and that's true for the pilots, ground volunteers, and volunteers, who agree to accompany on flights. As a pilot, you have to have 250 hours of PIC time if you have a private license, and 75 hours of cross-country time. If you have a commercial license or an ATP, the 250 hours, obviously have already been met, so that they don't have to be spelled out. Currency requirements, so total PIC time within the last 12 months, you have to have flown for 50 hours or more. Or conducted a flight review within the last 12 months, completed a wings pilot proficiency level program, added a new rating, or completed an IPC if you have an instrument rating. Your BFR has to be current. Your medical has to be current. Basic med is allowed. And if you own or operate an airplane, then liability has to be $500,000 and $100,000 per seat. You have to be 18 years or older. And transport of passengers in experimental and non-certified aircraft is not permitted. You can do things like carry organs, carry blood, carry supplies, but you cannot carry passengers in an experimental or non-certified aircraft. The command pilot verification process or the required documentation, you have to fill out a pilot affirmation form, which basically says that you will comply with all of the rules that Angel Flight lays out, that you will comply with, all of the federal aviation rules and regulations and so forth, as it pertains, well, to pretty much everything. You have to provide evidence of your pilot certificate with its ratings, evidence of your valid medical certificate and current, driver's license or other government ID that demonstrates, that proves that you are who you say you are, your pilot's logbook that shows that you are current and have met and are currently meeting the Angel Flight West minimum requirements, insurance documentation specifying that you have the right level of coverage. And then you have to go through and complete the OPA, Airplane Safety Institute benefits flying course. And Angel Flight West also has a course that you have to complete as well. So that course and the one from AOPA. Getting through that training takes about 2.5 hours. I did the AOPA course one day and then sat down and took the Angel Flight West the next day, and that in total was about 2.5 hours. For me, assembling all of that documentation was the most time-consuming part. It could be because it was a little bit tedious, especially scanning or photographing the logbook. And then once all of your documentation is assembled, you can upload it to the website or email it to your regional pilot coordinator. Volunteering for missions is pretty easy and straightforward. You can use the website. Website's it's not terrible, but it's not great. You can get on the phone and call the mission coordination team if you see a mission that you want to volunteer for, and they'll slot you in, so you don't have to use the website or the app. Or you can use the app, which personally I prefer. The app's pretty well laid out. It gives you the details. It gives you the ability to just sort of click on it, say I want this mission, and then you can set up your preferences and so forth. By distance, by preferred days that you choose to fly, by the max weight that you can support in your aircraft, and then you just go peruse the missions and sign up. Once you've agreed or volunteered for a mission, the first thing that you need to do is contact the passengers and let them know that their mission, has been assigned a pilot and that you are their pilot. You can arrange any details that need to be coordinated. There is an opportunity to check a box that allows for a mission volunteer. If you have room in your aircraft, it's always a good idea to do that. These volunteers are often pilots themselves. Lots of them are current, or they may be instrument rated and not current with their instrument ratings or whatever, but it's always great, to have somebody else in the right seat, who can fly. You coordinate with the arrival and departure FBOs. This is great because these FBOs are also support Angel Flight West. You can, park there, meet your passengers there, drop them off there, and they will waive any fees that they would normally charge, if you weren't on an Angel Flight West mission. Angel Flight West has a very established safety culture. I was hesitant to sign up for a long time because, I was worried that, gosh, sign up for this, general aviation, not always that reliable. Things happen, weather comes up, airplanes don't start. I didn't want to be in a situation, where somebody was depending on me and, I couldn't, fulfill my commitment. But 30% of their missions are canceled. If the weather is bad, plane pilot, all of those things, if any of that is off, you are encouraged to cancel the mission. The passengers are required to have alternative transportation arranged in the event that your flight cannot go off, which then, alleviates all of that pressure and the concerns, that one might have about, going, gosh, I don't know that, I don't want to, back out of my commitments, but you don't really have to worry about it, right? Obviously, you don't want to be a flake, but if there is a legitimate reason to cancel, it is certainly encouraged that you do so. So this is a screenshot of the app. So basically you go in, you set up your parameters, location, I'm Washington, and so forth. And then it gives you a list of available missions. So for this mission, this person, was traveling for donated dentistry work that was actually needed after an assault. Gives you information, the total weight. So, this is like the total weight of the passenger plus any baggage that they might have. When the mission needs to take place, where it starts and where it ends. So this is going from, Spokane to Wenatchee, total distance of 118 miles. If we were to zoom in on this, then we'll have some additional information, a breakdown of like the passenger weight versus the baggage weight. And if you want this mission, all you have to do is click this blue request button and it's all yours. Same thing with the one below, so this was a neurology consult, same date. This one going from Montana to Spokane and then from Spokane to Seattle. So this is one of the missions that I mentioned out of the gate. Lots of missions from Montana to Seattle and back again. And again, the total weight, you could click on it, drill down, but requesting is pretty easy and straightforward. You click the button and pretty much it says, yeah, this is your mission. So that is it for me with Pilots and Paws, Red Tail Talks, and Angel Flight.
Okay, thank you so much, Djana. Yeah, there was a lot there and we had some good questions come in too. So just so everyone knows, I'm queuing them up, not forgetting. But next we want to get to Tammy Willits, who is also going to speak about Angel Flight.
So yeah, my name is Tammy Willits and I am an instrument rated private pilot since 2013. I fly a 2008 Corvallis, so 4-seat single engine. And I fly for Angel Flight Central. And they have been operational for 27 years. They've conducted 33,000 flights for over 11 million miles. And since COVID, we're gearing, revving back up. We're doing about 2,200 flights per year since COVID, and with about 50 pilots actively flying every month. There are 230 pilots signed up with Angel Flight Central, but about 50 are actively flying each month. Most of our flights are headed towards Mayo in Rochester, Minnesota, or down to MD Anderson in Texas. And then we have some people that are coming actually into the Kansas City area to KU Med Center or Children's Mercy. So that's where the majority of our flights are based. And because they kind of go out of, some of them go out of the Angel Flight Central zone, we are coordinating with other Angel Flight agencies as well. And if you don't happen to live in the Angel Flight Central or the Angel Flight West zone, if you go to angelflight.com and you can put in your state and it will tell you which Angel Flight region that you are in to better assist you to sign up for the appropriate region that you are in. So we all need an excuse to fly anyway. And so we might as well help somebody that's in need and get a tax deduction while we're doing it. And those were two of my key reasons for joining up with Angel Flight. Is I'm a pharmacist by trade, so the medical field is where I'm at all day long, and helping people get to medical appointments just fit right in with that. And I get an email every single morning with a list of the flights that are available for me to choose from. I do own 2 businesses, take care of 2 grandchildren and my mother, so coordinating those flight times with my availability is sometimes a challenge, but I check every day and see whether something is available for me. And if it is, I just click on the link in the email and wait for them to confirm that I was the first one to claim that route, and then follow much the same procedure that Djana has already mentioned. So I won't go through all of that again. Angel Flight Central has the same requirements that she's already mentioned about Angel Flight West, and the processes really are the same across all the Angel Flight organizations. One thing I will mention is if you're flying for Angel Flight, the routes are they are flexible. So if you go to select a route and for some reason you don't like the airport where you're connecting, for me, if the connecting airport had a runway of 2,000 feet, I'm not landing there. I can't get my plane stopped and, down and stopped in 2,000 feet. So I can request that they change the route. So it's something to consider if you're flying for Angel Flight, that you can make requests to change the parameters of the flight. Most of our flights are limited to no more than 130 miles because that's allows for the slower airplanes to be able to take a person on a leg and still get the leg completed within 2 hours. My plane goes a lot faster than that. So a lot of times I will grab 2 legs for a total of up to 300 miles, which I can get done in 2 hours. And so that's also an option for you when you're flying for Angel Flight. I fly mostly in the Midwest, and Dwan mentioned ramp fees and all of that. We don't have those in the Midwest. Most of our airports you can land at for free. You can tie down overnight for free. But I did fly into an Arkansas airport one time that had a corporate charter jet company called Jet, J-E-T-T, and they came out and filled up my airplane with fuel for free since I was doing an Angel Flight. So that was pretty nice. The one thing about doing these flights is you meet really nice people at the airports that you get to interact with, and the pilots that are doing the connecting flights, you get to meet up with them and meet a lot of really interesting people. The other interesting people you get to meet are the passengers. And I have never, in all of the trips I've done, had a bad passenger. They were completely grateful of the resources and the time that the pilots were donating. They were completely respectful of the Angel Flight rules, regulations, the airplane, and myself. So it has been a delight to do every single flight. And part of the fun of doing the flight is getting to hear these people's stories while you're doing the flight and what challenges that they are up against and fighting hard for themselves. And that is just very encouraging to the pilots as well. One story, I used to fly a Cardinal and I took off from my airport and went to Tulsa. The headwinds were so bad that day that it almost took as long to fly as it would have just to drive the kid to Tulsa. When he got out of my humble little Cardinal, 1971 old Cardinal, and his next flight, the next leg of the flight, he was in a private jet. And I so wanted to get into that private jet with him and go on down to MD Anderson with him in that jet, but I did not. I will echo Dwan in that one of my big holdbacks from signing up from Angel Flight is I do not like to disappoint people. And I felt like if I committed to a mission, that it was my job to make sure that that mission took place. But the thing that I have to remind myself is I didn't commit to the mission, I committed to a safe flight. And if the plane's not ready, the pilot's not ready, or the weather does not cooperate, that is my first commitment, is that it has to be a safe flight. And if I can't guarantee a safe flight, then it is my responsibility to cancel. And I have had to do that on more than one occasion. And I don't like to disappoint people, but I would rather disappoint them while they're on the ground than disappoint them while we're in the air. That's going to be worse. So if you choose to do Angel Flight, like Dwan said, these people are told up front, general aviation is not a sure thing. And if the weather goes bad, we will cancel. If the plane fails the pre-flight, we will cancel, and you need a backup plan. And everyone that I have ever had to cancel on had a backup plan that they put into place. So don't hesitate to sign up for Angel Flight because you don't want to disappoint people. They have other plans in place. Real quick, so if you are one of the pilots that only fly in the pattern or only go for a $100 hamburger, doing Angel Flights will give you a real purpose to your flying, and it is very rewarding. Quickly mention the other volunteer opportunity that I do is I partner with Girl Scouts, and we do STEM presentations about aviation so that the girls know that, one, girls can fly, and two, that there are a lot of opportunities in aviation for them, depending on what their interests are for jobs. They could be a pilot, they could be a mechanic, they can be an airport manager. There's a lot of opportunities. The one thing that disappoints me about the Girl Scout organization is they do not allow the girls to actually go for a flight as part of a troop event. So I end up pointing them towards other opportunities where they can get a first flight and see whether it's something they're interested in. But I would really like to get with the higher ups in the Girl Scouts and try to convince them that this is an okay thing for the Girl Scouts to do. The Boy Scouts allow the boys to fly. The Girl Scouts don't let the Girl Scouts fly. So if any of you are interested in starting up a program with your local Girl Scouts, get in touch with me. I'll give you some tips on how to do that. And if anybody knows anybody up in the decision-making level of the Girl Scouts, please give me their contact information so that we can work on the opportunity to actually get these girls an opportunity to fly.
Okay, thank you so much, Tammy. And that's an excellent point. Some of us have had that struggle, and yeah, that there's work to be done there. So our final speaker this evening is going to be Lisa Hotung, who is going to talk about the patient airlift service.
Okay, hi everyone. I am going to share my screen. Okay, so I am a volunteer for PALS Skyhope, which is called Patient Airlift Services. I'm an instrument rated private pilot. I also have a seaplane rating, and I'm working on my tailwheel endorsement, but that has nothing to do with PALS. That is my plane. It's a 1975 Piper Cherokee Archer II, and I am based at Lancaster Airport in New York, just outside of Buffalo. So right off the bat, think Buffalo, terrible weather. So that will come into play for the rest of my talk. Once I got my pilot's license, I just always knew that I wanted to be able to volunteer and use my flying ability as a volunteer. Finally, in October of 2018, thanks to the encouragement of a friend and fellow 99, Shannon Osborne, who is on this call, thank you, Shannon, I decided to join PALS. So Patient Airlift Services is very similar to Angel Flight. They arrange free flights for medical patients who need either a diagnosis, a treatment, a follow-up, and if they either can't afford to fly commercially, or they are sometimes unable to fly commercially because they might be immunocompromised. They can't be in an airplane with lots of people. They can't be in an airport with thousands of people. PALS also does volunteer flights for family members of patients as compassion missions. They also help military personnel. I almost did a flight, which happened to be canceled because of weather, to take a veteran to a camp in near Atlanta called Camp Southern Ground. And they have these weekly camps for veterans. And that, that's a PALS ability as well. And PALS also supports humanitarian efforts during hurricanes or floods or other natural or man-made disasters. Like Angel Flight, PALS is a 501c3 nonprofit tax-exempt organization, and all the pilots volunteer their time and their aircraft, and they don't receive any compensation for that. PALS was founded in 2010 with only 80 pilots, but in the last 13 years, they have done more than 27,000 free flights for people, and there are now over 600 volunteer pilots in the PALS organization. There's an office for PALS on Long Island, and people work there to connect the people and the pilots and keep everything running smoothly. And they are very friendly, super easy to talk to, and wonderful to work with. Once you become a PALS pilot, you have access to the website, to the database, very similar to Angel Flight. Passengers who need flights are listed with the date, origin airport, destination airport, number of passengers, and the weights of the passengers and the luggage. And you can sort in the website according to any criteria that you want. And then as a pilot, you can just read about each mission and choose whichever one works with your own schedule and your aircraft. PALS is an organization that works mostly in the northeastern US. Typical flight times are about 2 to 3 hours, covering anywhere from 200 to 600 miles. I know my personal limit is 300 miles and 500 pounds. So when I'm looking on the website for the possibility of doing a flight, that's kind of what I work within. And as with Angel Flight, flights can be broken up into specific legs so that a passenger can get further from their home without having the pilots to having to fly really far. The basic requirements to be a PALS pilot, I'm sure, are very similar to Angel Flight. You have to have 350 hours total time in a single engine plane with 50 hours of PIC time. If you're flying a multi or turbine, it's 500 hours total time with 400 PIC. You must have an instrument rating because every PALS flight has to file an instrument flight plan. You have to have 50 hours PIC in the same make and model aircraft to be flown. And your aircraft has to be IFR certified. You can own it, rent it, or borrow it. It doesn't have to be your own aircraft. You have to have 50 hours PIC in the last 12 months and 12 hours PIC in the last 90 days. And when you sign up to be a PALS pilot, I think same as Angel Flight, you have to sign something saying that you promise you will always make sure that you can follow these rules. I mean, obviously your 350 hours, your 500 hours, that's not going to change, but you have to make sure that, okay, you haven't just had 4 months without flying and then, just jump on a mission. Like Angel Flight, PALS has a serious safety culture, and all PALS patients are required to have a backup plan in case their flight has to be canceled. We always put safety first, and we can cancel for any reason, weather, health of the pilot, issue with the airplane, without having any pressure put on us to go ahead with the flight. I have unfortunately had to cancel many, many flights because of weather. And every time I call up the office and I say, oh my God, I can't do it. There's icing, there's thunderstorm, there's this, there's that. No questions asked. They say, okay, thank you so much for volunteering. No problem. Catch you next time. There's absolutely no pressure to continue the flight. So I signed up for several flights, which kept getting canceled. My airplane does not have any kind of de-icing equipment. So even though I'm instrument rated, I can't fly in the clouds in winter in Buffalo. So finally, I was able to do my first PALS flight on July 1st of 2019. And I took a patient to Cleveland for some treatment. So I flew from my home airport to Genesee County, which was about a 15-minute flight, picked her up. We flew to Burke Lakefront, which was about 2 hours. And then I parked the plane. She got an Uber to her doctor's appointment, and I walked over to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I entertained myself, had a lovely lunch, walked back to the airport, picked her up about, I forget what time, 2 o'clock. And we got back in the plane and did the whole thing in reverse. And it was an amazing day and such a wonderful feeling to be able to help her with this. So that was July of 2019. That rest of that summer, things were busy, lots of different things happened. And then the weather in Buffalo. And we had rain, we had wind, we had snow. And then before we knew it, coronavirus. So I did not fly again for quite a long time. But eventually I was able to do my second flight this past November. And I took this young man and his grandmother from my home airport, Lancaster, to White Plains. And it was a great experience. They were wonderful passengers. And as a matter of fact, about 15 minutes after we took off, they both fell asleep and slept the whole way, which really made me feel good because it made me feel like they were so comfortable with me that they just relaxed and went to sleep. I was unable to bring him back again because he needed to stay in New York for like 4 or 5 days. But my parents live very close to White Plains Airport, so it worked out really well because I got to fly a PALS patient and spend the night with my parents and then fly home the next day. White Plains is in New York airspace, which is quite busy. And I filed, of course, an IFR plan, but I filed direct and I received direct. And I was flying along thinking, oh, this is wonderful. But I got about halfway there and I got the ATC call, 2139er Juliet, I have a new route for you. Advise when ready to copy. So there went my wonderful direct routing, and I copied and had to do all those different waypoints, but it all worked out fine. With PALS on the website, you can click on your own name, and it will give you a list of all the flights you've taken, total miles, hours, all that. And you can also print out a report for tax purposes or for your own information of how much you spent. After each flight, you have to fill out a report, excuse me, listing Hobbs time, distance, and fuel expenses. You don't get reimbursed for your fuel expenses, but PALS is keeping track. And then you have it for tax purposes. PALS is always looking for volunteer pilots, I'm sure, as is Angel West. But if you are not quite ready to be a PALS pilot, you could be a mission assistant, which is basically a co-pilot on a flight, and that will kind of ease your way in. In addition, there are several volunteer opportunities for non-pilots. The first one is called an autopilot. Sometimes when passengers are brought to an airport, they need transportation between that airport and their actual medical treatment center. So somebody will do that. There's opportunity for outreach to spread the word to hospitals, veterans groups, and other community organizations. Fundraising is always needed because a lot of times PALS will be able to pay for a commercial flight for a passenger if the general aviation flight needs to be canceled. They are also needing people during disaster and humanitarian situations. There's lots of different jobs that need to be done. And of course, there's always office assistance if you live near Farmingdale, New York, on Long Island. So here's all the information to contact PALS. There's the website, palservices.org, along with the address and phone number and email address if you wanted to just shoot them an email. So that's it.
Okay, thanks very much, Lisa. We did get some questions, and if you're thinking of more questions, now that Lisa's finished up and we've gone through all the organizations, please feel free to put them in the chat. So first and foremost, of course, we had many comments on how cute the pictures and videos of the dogs were, which is true. Christina said she's fostered 135 rescue dogs. I became a pilot to do this, would love to do a leg of a trip and just didn't know this was an option. And then she said, which other people had mentioned too, time, fuel, money are all considerations for people who would like to volunteer, but just haven't yet. There is a question from Carol, particular to the Pilots and Paws presenters. What considerations about altitudes for dogs, engine noise, co-pilot, having a helper, what kind of considerations do you take into the flight for the dogs?
Well, I can answer that. I always take a pup wrangler with me. And this sounds really, really strange, but I used to have one guy that went along with me all the time, and then he had some issues, so he couldn't go. So I was getting desperate. And sometimes, you saw in the pictures how many dogs I take at one time. A lot of them are in crates. Occasionally they sit on the floor they're all tethered. And it's nice to have a pup wrangler. I once had border collies that figured out the two-step process to open the crate and got out a couple times. And I had to send my pup wrangler, make sure she sat with her legs around the crate so he couldn't get out. But yes, for noise, they adapt to the noise. It's not a problem. I've taken them in my Piper Mirage. I've taken them in my 182. It's really not. With the 182, I like to stay 8,000 feet or under. In my Mirage, it's pressurized, no issue. But it's pressurized when I fly at like 22,000 feet. It's pressurized to 8,000. So that's why I try and, limit it to 8,000 when I fly my 182. And then as far as anything else, yes, it is. Well, I'm retired, so time isn't big an issue for me, but you can tell them what days. I do a lot on Saturdays and Sundays, and I'll do it on weekdays, but sometimes the rescue people, they have an issue and they want to do it on the weekend, and I don't care. As long as it meshes with my schedule, I'm okay. Now, money is an issue. I have gone to various airports and I said, hey, can I get a discount? And the answer is most often yes. They might give me 50 cents off, or for example, I always get the self-fuel price. Although when it's just such an effort to take all these dogs and do all the work that I hate to fuel the plane myself. I know I've done it. I will do it, and also I asked for help in fueling the airplane because I got my hands full as it is, even with a pup wrangler. And people are always willing to help. I do ask for breaks, and you're free to pick the airport that has the cheapest fuel. And I tell my people, they don't tell me, they just say, hey, I do a lot out of the Denver area. I'm based in Vail, Colorado a lot. Also on the East Coast, I'm based at Frederick or Gaithersburg. And I tell them where I'm going to drop them off, in that region. I mean, I've done all the Front Range airports, and I won't do Aspen, Colorado, because they charge $80 to land, and they're really pricks about it. So I land at Vail, Colorado, where it's free. So they come over from Aspen to Vail, and I know that's an hour for them, but you can do that too. You can say, well, this airport XYZ, they have gas that's $3 cheaper than the other place. And you can do that. And it's really, they're very accommodating.
Right. Also regarding the hearing protection, I use hearing protection for my own dog because I think that over time, the loud noises, given dog sensitivity, matters. The dogs that we're transporting, sometimes they're in crates. And they haven't had the best circumstances, and some of them can be a little unpredictable, so dealing with the hearing protection, for the dogs that we're transporting isn't always practical. For dogs that, are very well adjusted, I have a couple different sizes. I'll use hearing protection for those dogs. I saw there was a question about, whether or not you have to worry about the plane getting messed up. A lot of the dogs are in crates, so you don't have to worry about that. For the dogs that I tether, I always use like the ultra large wee pads under the seat, a couple of layers of protection and so forth, and then a heavy duty seat cover so that they can be comfortable. I've never had an issue.
And there was also a question for Djana and for Deb regarding Pilots and Paws. Do you submit your expenses to the IRS for a deduction?
Yes. I rarely do, because I despise doing my taxes and all the taxes anyway, and I'm going to fly anyhow. So I don't worry about it for the most part. But
I do.
You can.
I mean, you should, but Djana, you should. I have Pilots and Paws actually has a form that you fill out. I get people to sign it. I have the contact, how many dogs, what their names are. And a lot of times they send me pictures of the dogs. I staple it to my form. And then I look online and see how much is my plane to rent, for a wet. And that's what one of my planes is only, I don't know, $400 an hour. The other one is $600 an hour. And I totally write that in. If I have a plane, and a lot of my stuff is like 4 hours, and it's 2 hours there, 2 hours back, I for sure write that off. I do. You should do it too.
It's just paperwork that I don't want to spend the time doing, but yeah, it's certainly an option. Yeah.
And then we had another question. So I think we have airplane owners here, but there was a question. Is there any organization, I think they all allowed people to rent and to fly in rental aircraft. Did we hit any organization tonight that does not allow that?
They all allow it. You just have to provide the necessary evidence of insurance.
Yep,
Mhm.
you do. They just want to know you're insured.
Okay. And then for Angel Flight, are there any particular disaster relief organizations that Angel Flight partners with? For example, getting patients to a specific hospital or an evacuation from a hospital, something like that?
Well, that
So,
sounds,
go
go
ahead.
ahead, Dwan.
No, I was gonna say, I have Angel Flight will reach out, and say, hey, we have an emergency situation. This family has gotten trapped here. Is there anyone who can step up? And every time I've seen that, somebody has stepped up within a couple of minutes. So very high responsiveness with those types of situations.
Tammy?
Just, we've had the same experience as Dwan and I, so nope, I concur with what she said. We don't do emergencies, but in situations where, they need to get transported for not a medical emergency, but because they got trapped, then yeah, absolutely. But we don't do medical emergencies at all.
Okay. Okay. And then further to your previous point, Tammy, from Christina, she said, anyone in Florida, Hotel Whiskey Oscar, Girl Scout Day, Saturday, March 11th. And yes, EAA Young Eagles Fly Day, March 25th. And, just to concur with what you said, I'm chair of Greater New York chapter. We do a lot of work with the Girl Scouts. And yeah, we're experiencing all those things you mentioned. Another question for any organization, although I think we were talking about Angel Flight when this question came in, although I think it's relevant. Do you do weight checks at ramp for passengers and baggage?
Baggage, yes. If there's any question, I will weigh their baggage. I have never had anybody tell me a weight that I didn't believe was accurate when they got there. I have heard other pilots say that they have had those issues. That has never occurred with any of mine. They give me their weight. I look at them and go, yeah, that's probably pretty accurate. Or I would have guessed them lighter than what they're actually putting down. So I have not, I don't weigh them at the ramp. I will do luggage if it's larger than what I suspect.
Okay. Terry says, I am a commercial airline pilot retiring in 1.5 years who has worked with rescue groups for years on the ground. I would love to be a co-pilot to a pilot on the East Coast who works with pilots and Paws, Angel Flight, or PALS. Sign me up. So I was going to say this again at the end, but because there was so much information that was presented tonight, as always, we will have this recording posted on both the 99's YouTube channel and also under the resources page of the 99's website. So if anyone wants to catch some of the information again, we'll have that fairly soon. One other question, how do we know if a Pilots and Paws trip can be broken into legs versus flying the whole thing?
Oh, well, you just tell them. I mean, when you answer the, if you look on the transport map, like there's one transport that I looked at just today, and it's going all the way from like Florida to Denver. Well, nobody's going to do that. So what happens is, well, I can fly from Texas to Denver. And then somebody else will say, well, I can fly from Arkansas to Texas. And another person will say, well, I can fly from Florida to Arkansas. So you volunteer, and then they keep putting it out there, and you can set your email. It asks you, can we email you when something's in your area? And you can choose to answer it or not. I mean, it's not to you, it's to all the pilots in that region. And they just, and you can accept it or not. And,
Same thing with PALS. There was a
Right.
flight that I saw on there that was from my airport, but to Atlanta. And I can't do that without at least one, maybe two stops. So I called them up and I said, I'd really like to do this flight, but I can only go this far. And they had it all arranged, and then bad weather canceled the flight and I didn't get to do it anyway, but
Yeah. And with Pilots and Paws, for the other pilots who volunteer, you can negotiate, right? Hey, can you come up to Roseburg as opposed to Ashland or whatever? And, at the end of it all, you come up with a flight plan that everybody can work with.
yep.
And we did get some thank yous to everybody for the presentations being so interesting and informative. And I would also like to thank all of our evening's presenters, and also for their organizations for the important work that they're being done. And on the topic of thank yous, one more thank you going out to SiriusXM for their sponsorship and support of the 99s. And so we're fortunate, Glenna was able to join us. She just got into Oklahoma City for this week's Board of Trustees meeting. So I'm gonna hand things over to Glenna to tell us about April's webinar, which is very interesting, different from anything we've done before. And Glenna will close us out.
Well, thanks, Deb. Thank you, everyone, for the wonderful presentation. It just gets me fired up. I want to go fly and help pets and people. But I wanted to let you all know, and please join us on April 12th, Wednesday, April 12th. Celeste Pierce will be presenting. The title is Flying for Humanity. Now, Celeste is a American Airlines 777 pilot, and she'll recount her missions piloting evacuation flights carrying at-risk Afghanistan's civilians and American troops. And you'll see the information coming soon. We're advertising. You can do the same. Just register in advance. So look for that. And thanks again. It was great. Good night.
Night.
Good night, everyone.
Night.